Violent attacks against social and indigenous leaders continue in Colombia. Local authorities of the Cauca department reported the murder of the indigenous leader Gilberto Findicue Achicue. On Tuesday, Russia and China condemned Western countries' unilateral sanction policies that aim to force others to unexpected behavior and impose their hegemonic power. In southern Bangladesh, at least 15 people died in a devastating fire that destroyed thousands of shelters in a Rohinga refugee camp. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The violent attacks against social and indigenous leaders continue in Colombia, where local authorities of the Cauca department report the assassination of indigenous leader Gilberto Findicue Achicue on Monday. According to local sources, Findicue was killed by unidentified gunmen who broke into the San Andres de Pisimbala reservation in the municipality of Insay, in the department of Cauca, and attempted to kidnap 4 members of the community. 2 victims managed to escape from the captors and a 4th was wounded. The indigenous authorities of the San Andres de Pisimbala reservation issued a statement expressing their strongest rejection to this event, as well as to the presence of irregular armed groups in the area. According to the Institute of Peace and Development Studies, Findicue Achicue's case is the 35th social leader murder in Colombia so far in 2021. Demonstrators had been gathered in the front of the Dominican government palace for 10 days to demand the legalization of abortion. This legislation has remained unchanged in the Dominican Republic since 1884. Abortion is illegal and punishable by prison sentences, but deputies are due to begin to consider a possible reform. The Chamber of Deputies is debating whether to include a reform of the 1884 Penal Code, the 3 grounds of which abortion could be legal: when the pregnancy is the result of incest or rape, when the mother's life is at risk, or when the fetus has a life-ending malformation. According to Rafael Mena, president of the Association of Private Hospitals, nearly 90,000 abortions are performed each year in the country in a clandestine way and in most cases in unsafe conditions. And we continue in Bolivia, where social movements marched this Monday to demand justice for the victims of the 2019 coup against former President Evo Morales. The mobilization in defense of democracy began in the city of La Paz. Participants demanded that those responsible for the massacres in Sencata and Sacaba, carried out in the context of the coup and under the de facto regime led by Janine Áñez, be punished in accordance with the law. The repression exercised by the security forces on orders of the de facto government against those who mobilized to reject the coup left more than 30 dead and around 800 wounded. Protesters also took the opportunity on Monday to voice their support for current President Luis Arce. Also in Bolivia, the Truth Commission presented a report on crimes against humanity committed during the military dictatorship of 1964 to 1982. The delegation presented its final report to President Luis Arce on the investigations into the murders, forced disappearances, torture, and other human rights violations during the repressive regime that lasted 18 years. The Commission also called on the Bolivian president to ensure that the human rights violations committed during the dictatorship do not go unpunished. The meeting was attended by Bolivian lawmakers as well as the country's Vice President David Choquehuanca. The Truth Commission was established in 2016 under the government of then President Evo Morales. And as part of the presidential debate in Peru, Johnny Lescano, the candidate for the Popular Action Party, proposed tax relief for small and medium-sized businesses.
We have to provide tax and economic relief to small entrepreneurs. We cannot impose them taxes.
Millions of small entrepreneurs have disappeared, and consequently, it is not possible to demand to pay taxes in this situation. A business support fund must be created.
Meanwhile, the presidential candidate for the far-right Popular Force Party, Keiko Fujimori, who herself faces corruption allegations, claimed that the COVID-19 quarantine in Peru was a failure.
The economic situation in our country is really a tragedy. Millions of Peruvians have lost their jobs. How are we going to reactivate the economy and collect more taxes? By expanding the tax bases. But for that to happen, we have to recognize that the quarantine in our country has been a failure. The efforts of millions of Peruvians who stayed at home were not used by this or the previous administration to expand the health systems, the beds in the ICU, or to build oxygen plants.
Veronica Mendoza, the candidate for the Progressive Together for Peru coalition, explained her proposals to fight corruption.
Our priority will be to prevent corruption through planning, transparency and citizen involvement. Planning to prevent infrastructure works from being defined with shady agreements, with bribes, but rather that they are defined with a transparent, planned manner and with previously established criteria.
With the highest rate of recovered COVID-19 patients in the Americas, Cuba has begun phase 3 clinical trials of its second vaccine candidate, Abdala, in the eastern part of the island, while the trial of the Soberana 02 candidate continues in the western part of the country. Our correspondent, Rolando Segura, has the story.
Abdala is the second vaccine candidate against COVID-19 in Cuba to enter the final phase prior to its definite approval. We have our second vaccine candidate authorized to begin its phase 3 clinical trials. This is something that really motivates us and provides us with lots of energy to keep working. Cuba is producing the Abdala vaccine candidate on an industrial scale and will begin its application with 3 doses during a month to 48,000 volunteers in 3 cities in the eastern part of the country. If satisfactory results are achieved, the requests for emergency use authorization will follow.
It will open the regulatory path, also approved in Cuba, to extend the vaccination process to the entire population.
Meanwhile, the Soberana 02 vaccine candidate continues its final stage of trials with 44,000 volunteers in Havana. 150,000 frontline health workers will also be vaccinated with the vaccine to evaluate the effects in at-risk populations. Cuba has the goal to immunize its entire population, more than 11.2 million people, this year. We are preparing to produce between 1 and 2 million doses per month, on average, and this will allow us to vaccinate the population in about 6 months, because the country needs 30 million. Applying the same recombinant protein technique used by the United States biotechnology company Novavax, Cuba is developing 5 vaccine candidates, and whichever receives official approval will become the first vaccine against COVID-19 to be developed and produced in Latin America.
Rolando Segura, TeleSUR.
We'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticized the European Union, saying it has destroyed the infrastructure of mutual relations.
I underline one more time, we don't have relations with the European Union as an organization. The infrastructure of the relations was destroyed by Brussels' one-sided decisions. It's unacceptable to handle matters in the world with ultimatums and sanctions, compelling other countries to do a certain expected behavior. We have a proverb saying, love can't be forced. The United States hasn't learned this proverb, unfortunately, and act according to opposite positions.
On Tuesday, China condemned the US, Canada, the UK and the EU after these countries announced sanctions on Chinese individuals and entities on alleged human rights violations and forced labor in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
What they have done is a slander and an offense to the reputation and dignity of the Chinese people, a blatant interference in China's internal affairs, and a serious infringement on China's sovereignty and security interests. These countries have claimed to be judges of human rights and acted as lecturers of human rights, but they actually have deplorable human rights record, and they are not in any position to blame China or even scapegoating China for their own crimes.
And people aged over 69 get vaccinated with the coronavac shot at a drive-through central in the capital, Brasilia, as Brazil faces a COVID-19 surge, which is again pushing many hospitals to the breaking point. The country has recorded the second most coronavirus deaths after the United States, and the situation is worsening. The average daily death toll in the South American nation is currently the highest worldwide and has more than tripled since the start of the year, to 2,259. In the middle of this desperate situation, President Jair Bolsonaro announced last Monday he was firing Health Minister and Army General Eduardo Pazuello and replacing him with cardiologist Marcelo Queiroga. And we continue the news. In Uruguay, the number of people infected with the coronavirus have increased. Health authorities from the South American country reported that in the last 24 hours, more than 2,000 new cases caused by the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 were confirmed, with 811 fatalities. Health workers demanded new economic and health measures to fight the spread, following the new record of confirmed cases from the respiratory disease. Health authorities link the increase of contagion in presence in the country of the new Brazilian strain of COVID-19. Another 500,000 doses of the Sputnik V vaccine arrived on Monday in Argentina from Russia, as the government warned of a possible second wave of coronavirus cases already affecting neighboring countries.
As part of the national government, we are receiving 500,000 doses of Sputnik V vaccines, which means that we already have 3.3 million doses of Sputnik, and that we have reached 4.8 million doses in total, with other vaccines that are being distributed. The reality is that these are not a few vaccines in the global context. Notice that the President reported on Thursday that only 15 countries have received 10% of what vaccines they have asked for, and 88% of the vaccines have reached 18 countries. So you have to see the global context in relation to the vaccine production. And really, it's an important achievement that Argentina has maintained the arrival of vaccines and vaccinations since the end of December.
The second batch of vaccines managed through the COVAX mechanism against COVID-19 arrived in El Salvador this Monday. The new batch includes about 51,480 doses of vaccines developed by the American company Pfizer in order to continue with the immunization plan that began last 17 February. These doses correspond to an exclusive delivery under the first wave pilot program for only 18 countries, which met criteria such as mortality levels, impact of the pandemic, and quantity of available doses. The Minister of Health, Francisco Albán, said that the new batch will vaccinate non-health personnel, such as teachers, police, and military, to close the initial phase of immunization. The director of the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention has warned that COVID-19 variants are spreading rapidly throughout the U.S. and making up a greater portion of new cases. Top health official Rochelle Walensky on Monday warned Americans it was too soon to resume traveling despite progresses in the battle against the coronavirus, after data showed the country recorded its highest number of airport check-ins since last year. The rate of U.S. COVID infections has been stabilizing at over 50,000 for the However, officials suspect new variants of the virus, together with states loosening restrictions, have kept the daily case figures in the tens of thousands. After marathon talks with regional leaders, German Chancellor Angela Merkel announced the country will prolong its coronavirus restrictions until April 18th and enter a strict lockdown for 5 days over Easter in a bid to halt soaring infection rates.
Reason on April the 1st and April the 3rd are decreed as days of rest for once, with weight restrictions on contacts and a ban on gatherings from the 1st to the 5th of April. It is an extended period of rest during Easter.
And we'll have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. At least 15 people have died after devastating fire destroyed thousands of shelters in a Rohinga refugee camp in southern Bangladesh. According to Louise Donovan, a spokesperson for the United Nations Refugee Agency, about 400 people are still missing and around 560 were injured by the fire. In the aftermath, refugees searched through the burned debris looking for the belongings. Also, several women said their young children were missing after the fire. A top government official in Ukiah said at least 3 of the dead were children and the search for the victims was still ongoing. The UNHCR said around 45,000 people were displaced by the fire, which broke out on Monday afternoon and burned during the night. Protesters blocked a highway outside the northwest Nigerian city of Kaduna on Monday to demand the release of kidnapped students. Since March 11th, gunmen have been holding 39 college students who were seized from hostels in a raid. The military rescued 180 other students and staff. The protesters blocked the road outside the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization on the city's outskirts and pushed a tractor belonging to the college along the highway, while mothers held posters of their children and pleaded for the rescue. The parents of the kidnapped students have criticized the government's handling of the case. Nearly 1/3 of Nigerian children lack access to enough water, according to UNICEF, which is calling for urgent measures to address the problem. In a statement on World Water Day, the United Nations Children's Fund said more than 1.42 billion people, including 450 million children across the world, are living in areas of high or extremely high water vulnerability. About 100,000 Nigerian children are said to die every year of water-related diseases, and over 86% of Nigerians lack access to a safely managed drinking water source. UNICEF said despite some progress by the country, there is still much more work to be done. Attackers on motorbikes raided several villages in southwestern Niger on Sunday, killing at least 137 people in the bloodiest violence to hit the country in years, according to the government. The gunmen attacked the villages of Intasayene, Bakurat, and Wistane, located near the border with Mali, shooting at everything which moved, according to a local official. The coordinated raids underscored the greatest challenge facing Niger's new president, Mohamed Bazoum, whose election victory in a runoff vote last month was confirmed on Sunday by the country's top court. The country is struggling with armed campaigns that have spilled over from Mali and Nigeria, killing hundreds of people and displacing nearly 500,000 others. The head of the African Union Observer Mission to the presidential elections in the Republic of the Congo congratulated the Congolese people following a calm and peaceful vote.
The mission congratulates the Congolese people for their calm mobilization and their commitment to democratic values. It also congratulates the government authorities, the CENI, Independent National Electoral Commission, the political actors and the defense and security forces who work to hold an inclusive and peaceful election, consolidating the democratic achievements of the Republic of Congo. The mission remains attentive to the rest of the process, in particular decentralization, compilation, proclamation of results, and litigation. It urges the candidates to respect the verdict of the ballot box and to use the legal channels of appeal in case of dispute.
The United Nations has stated that the situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is alarming, according to data collected in 2020. According to a report by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, at least 2,945 civilians, including 553 women and also 286 children, were killed in 2020. Meanwhile, the UN stabilization mission in the country, known as MONUSCO, noted that there had been a worrying increase in attacks by armed groups against the civilian population, in particular in the provinces of Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu. The violations were committed by a range of armed groups which operate in vast areas of the country, where, according to the UN, there is little or no presence of Congolese authorities.
Les membres de la société civile sur la détérioration préoccupante
civil society on the worrying deterioration of the security, humanitarian and human rights situation in the provinces affected by the armed conflict, where MONUSCO has documented a worrying increase in the attacks by armed groups against the civilian population, in particular in the provinces of Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu. In addition to strengthening the fight against impunity, a credible and holistic transitional justice process, a credible demobilization program, disarmament, community reintegration, and stabilization program, and the adoption of socio-economic policies are essential to curb the violence and build lasting peace and security.
Saudi Arabia offers Yemen's Houthi forces a comprehensive UN-supervised ceasefire as part of a series of new initiatives aimed at ending a catastrophic 6-year conflict. The initiative includes a comprehensive ceasefire across the country under the supervision of the United Nations, a government statement said.
So we will work with the international community, with our partners, and with the government of Yemen to push toward this initiative being implemented. We will do all we can to put the necessary pressure on the Houthis to accept and to come to the negotiating table and to lay down arms, because we believe that a stop to the fighting and a focus on a political solution is the only way forward. So we will work. We want the guns to fall completely silent. That is the initiative, and that is the only thing that can really help us get to the next step, which is a political process and a resolution that can make Yemen safe and secure for the people of Yemen.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.